systems engaged. Frequencies synchronized. Prepare for incoming transmission. Coming to you from somewhere in the multiverse, this is Robots from Tomorrow. This show is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, and as always your podcatcher of choice. For the full archive featuring over 800 episodes of comics and comics-friendly content like interviews, book discussions, and freeform tomfoolery, please go to robotsfromtomorrow.net. Here is your host, Greg.
Hello everybody, welcome to Robots from Tomorrow. My name is Greg, glad to have you with us. As we gear up for the release of my talk with Aditya Bidikar about his new image miniseries and mainstream comics writing debut, In Your Skin, we are re-releasing the two-part conversation I had with him and letterer, cartoonist, friend of the show, John Workman, back in 2022 in our Robots Remastered format. Robots Remastered. Better audio, shorter runtime with no real content loss, more bang for no bucks. What more can you ask for? We talked for about 3 hours, which is why I broke that conversation into 2 episodes originally. These remasters keep that same structure, even though we chopped about 40 minutes out of the conversation all told. The whole thing is loaded with production stories, lettering insights, cross-generational bonding, and more than a little fanboying in all directions. Mutual admiration society all around, but hey, isn't that what podcasts are for sometimes? And a little production peek behind the curtain. This second part will start off with what sounds like me bringing the conversation to a close before Aditya jumps in with another question for John. The reason I was trying to end it there is because we were coming to the end of the meeting time and I was horrified that call was going to cut off at any second. Now, this is one of the first times I'd used Zoom since Mike and I had always used Skype, so I didn't know that the meeting end time didn't mean the call just, ended. So the reason I kind of drop out of the talk for a little bit is because I'm frantically looking at the clock as we hit the 2-hour mark and trying to see if there was in fact disaster around the corner. My guests, hopefully oblivious to the nervous breakdown I was having. Fortunately, everything turned out fine, and we got another hour of lettering and comics talk goodness. Podcasting. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy the second part of this lettering and comics masterclass from Aditya Bidikar and John Workman. Gentlemen, I could...
Actually, I have one more question.
Yes, sure.
So since you're a writer, artist, and letterer yourself, have you been working on something like Barry Windsor-Smith, where you're going to throw like a 350-page monster at us at some point of time? Like, have you been making your own comics?
It's been a while. I did a drawing last year, and there have been different artists who contacted me. I found it strange, but a bunch of them sort of converged all at once and said, why aren't you drawing more? And one of them was very almost demanding in a way. I was happy that he did this, but he said, send me something that you've done and I'll tell you if you still got it or not. So I did. And he liked the thing I was working on, and that made me feel good. I would like to get the 2-issue thing I did years ago of Wild Things back in print. It was made up of mostly of stuff that I did for Star Reach and Heavy Metal and some other things and some new stuff. The things that I really enjoy, relatively short stuff, a half a page, maybe up to 8 pages, they really aren't being done so much in the United States anymore. Gee, when I was starting out in the late 60s and early 70s, there were several things that happened where I did some artwork or wrote stories, did artwork, lettering, and all that on them. And the people really liked them. And then something happened and they were never printed. And I would have done them for free just to get them in print, Basil Wolverton told me that no matter who you are, no artist ever gets over the thrill of opening a book and seeing their stuff there. And he was so right. I don't know whether I'll ever be doing other things to any degree, but there's some possibilities.
How did Shutter come about?
Oh, golly, I don't really know. The people behind it, you'll have to pardon me. Names have started to fly out of
that would be Joe and Leila.
Yeah, Joe Keating, Leila Del Duca. An excellent series. One of my favorites, by the way. Thank you. Thank you for
absolutely. I love that series. Yeah, so good.
Someone else had lettered the first 6 issues, and they were going on to, I think, do some artwork or something. And
I think it was Ed Brisson, and he writes now. Like he's a writer.
Yeah. Joe contacted me and I thought, well, yeah, it sounds good. And they were so wonderful about it. They offered me a chance to do an alternate cover for the first issue that I worked on. So I drew that, and I didn't think it was the greatest thing ever done, but it's still fun and enjoyable. And there was a incredible write-up about me in that issue of about 3 pages of, my history and all that. And
I don't.
and it was just a pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the.
It was such a pleasure working on that book. I thought I didn't hit my stride until I was maybe 3 or 4 issues into it. And I was doing a type of balloon that I regret having done now. I should have gone for more of the oval types. But I was doing something I called my semi-Marvel balloon. One of the Lampoon editors years ago, he hated some of these balloons. He called them hot dog balloons. In Marvel books of the 1960s, if there were 2 long lines, it went around almost in the shape of a hot dog bun. And yeah, I wish I had made these a little more rounded on those earlier issues of it. But they gave me the opportunity to do so many things. There was a fake newspaper comics page. And so I had to go in and letter it in the way that the original creator had done. And that was fun. I did the same thing for National Lampoon years earlier. They had something called the Lampoon Newspaper Parody. And they had 8 pages of Sunday comics. And I went in and actually drew one of them. I drew the Spider-Man. Squirrel Man was the name of it. It was a Spider-Man satire. And I made it as close to what Romita and the guys were doing at that time. But it was wonderful lettering this Blondie satire and trying to make it look like Blondie. And I really enjoyed that.
I can imagine. I saw the latest series of The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen has like a lot of these sort of parody pastiche kind of styles. And you can really see Todd Klein is having the time of his life despite doing all these different styles and, the scalloped balloons from older times. It's really fun to see. Yeah.
I did something once that fulfilled a dream of mine from my childhood when I first came across Little Nemo. I loved it. The architectural bits in it and the drawing is all, and I could not stand the lettering. The Letterforms themselves were fine, but the balloons, they
I know exactly what you mean. They're just too close together.
Yeah. Oh, it bothered me. And I worked on a book several years ago where a whole bunch of artists got together and did Little Nemo pages.
Is it Dream a Little Dream? The Locust Moon, the big, huge.
Yes.
Yeah. I've got one of the
Well, I lettered one of those pages, and there wasn't a lot of lettering on it. And I thought, I'd love to do this the way that the artist did it, but to do the proper flow. So I went and I looked through the Little Nemo books that I had, and I scanned in one of the pages that had a lot of lettering on it. And letter by letter, I set up so the artist, whose name also flies on my head here, he's dead, he's long gone, but he lettered that page, and I put him
You were a spirit medium.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I was flipping through the Shudder book here. I think issue 11 or so, there is a Little Nemo pastiche 2-page spread that I'm assuming you also lettered as well. It's a gorgeous. Yeah. Oh man, that book. Yeah.
Such a good book. I think the first time I read it, it didn't really sink in everything what they were doing. And then the second time I read it, I was just like, okay, this is one of the best new comics I've read. Like, this is just insanely good.
Yeah. It felt like an indie comic from the 80s in the best way. It feels like something First Comics would have put out, and it would have been, if not like technically in that sort of wheelhouse, like of that spirit. It's going this way, and then Joe and Layla and you and everybody are just going this other way. It was fantastic. Even Joe using the last 6 or 7 pages of each issue. Other cartoonists, a couple of like short stories. You got some Rafer Roberts stuff and nice letters pages and everything. I love that book enough to make 2 volumes of it.
They need to do a page of artwork for them. And it's a little weird story about a woman from the future floating in this netherworld between her time and our time. It's so beautiful. She just stays there. Weird little story, but I even colored that one. And they printed it in one of the later issues, number 14 or something like that, I think it was. But I was so happy to be allowed to do that. It was a great thing. And Joe always talked about getting a compilation group of books together in a slipcase, maybe broken into 3 separate books. And I'd love to see that actually happen.
Yeah, that would be lovely.
After you had started working on it, maybe like the end of your first issue, there's like a big splash page that has like a big dragon or something on it, and you got to do one of your Thor-esque Strike of Doom gigantic sound effects on it. I was talking to Joe and I was like, there had to be a thrill writing in what the sound effect would be, do a John Workman type effect, but knowing you had John Workman to actually do that. He's like, yeah, that was a good day. I was like,
I remember about it is I think I did it 3 times before I was happy. I was nervous about working on the book, actually. And as I said, I hadn't quite gotten into the vibe there. But on that one, I did it 3 times. And that brings up a question for you. I read some of the things that you've written and all, and you talked about doing one page 4 times before you were happy with it. And I've done some similar things, never 4 times, but I've done things 2 or 3 times before I'm really happy with them. But
I think I'm not entirely sure which one that is, but I think it might be the first few pages of Graffiti's Wall, because this was back when I was still trying to figure out hand lettering, and the first version of the page was far too big to actually, accommodate the later text. So we didn't realize it in the first couple of pages, but then I tried doing it in uppercase to make it smaller, and then that didn't work. And then finally I landed on what I did, which was essentially what I did was I drew like 2 lines and then used that as the lowercase base and used very small centers and descenders on top and bottom, and kind of made the whole thing fit. And I think that was around 2 mm. And I kind of looked at like page 13 and I realized that, okay, I can do the whole book in that size. So that was, I think, my 4th tryout of that book. Yeah, I still have the older versions of the pages somewhere. And I think the preview was actually of that size. It was when we kind of got to page number 8 or 9, the writer called me up and said, like, you know what, like when I'm actually writing dialogue, this is not enough. Like, I need the lettering to be smaller. And it's hand lettering, so you have to redo the whole thing.
Oh.
Yeah, that was a mistake that I learned from.
There's a sad story about some lettering at DC in the late 1980s. Milton Caniff had died, and his letterer got to do some work at DC. And no one told him or gave him any information about the size that was needed for the lettering. So he lettered it, lettering a Caniff page or a Caniff daily or Sunday. And it was much too big, but it was beautiful. And I came in one day and one of the freelancers was sitting there relettering all those pages. And really all they had to do was take a shot and reduce it. And then if there was too much space around the balloon, then they could have gone in and, did a little art extension or something. But his lettering was gorgeous. And it was just the wrong size. That was the problem.
Yeah, I remember Todd Klein was talking about this once, where I think he did this Dr. Midnight miniseries where the letterings are like a little bit smaller. And then once that was published, a bunch of his artists called him up and said, like, why can't you letter that small on my artwork? And he's like, I lettered it at the same size. You just have to draw bigger.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
I was thinking of another story. I can't remember. About sizes, like somebody getting it wrong. Can't remember.
Yeah. The one size story I remember is not necessarily lettering. It's more of a artwork thing. And hopefully I'll get this right, but it is DC related. It's when they were starting to integrate a lot of the Filipino artists in like the 70s. And so they were commissioned to do some of these books. When they sent in their artwork, the original art pages were essentially like comic book sized. So they're doing, you have this like Alfredo Alcala, like super ornate etched masterpieces. And, it's not like the usual, hey, we're working twice up and it gets reduced. They're like, no, those are the actual pages. They're like, well, the comic is that size. That's the size you draw it. And it was like, everyone's heads like exploded. Like, what are you? How is this? There's probably more to that story than that, but.
Well, Jack Cole back in the 40s decided at one point to do the artwork for Plastic Man, either close to or at the actual printed size. And it drove the letterer bonkers. He managed to do it. Murphy Anderson told me, Murphy used to drive me down to the bus terminal when I was working up at DC, and he'd come in and we'd meet at McDonald's and exchange art and stuff like that. We got a chance to talk a lot. And he told me he felt bad about it when he left DC and comics for a while there to do the Buck Rogers newspaper strip. He kept the aspect ratio the same on Buck Rogers, but he reduced it down a little bit, and he felt more comfortable with that. And when he went back to DC, the art size was 12 by 18 at the time. And he thought, gee, I'd like to do this at 10 by 15. And he talked to the people at DC, and they said, well, as long as the aspect ratio is the same, when we reduce it down, okay.
Scale up, yeah.
He did this, and the people who did the film work for DC called up and said, if you do all your pages this size, it's going to save you $3 a page, I think it was. Well, the powers be decided we're now doing all artwork at 10 by 15.
10 by
It had a bad effect. It went from DC to Marvel to all the others. It had a bit of a bad effect on Kirby and Gil Kane and different people because they were used to drawing larger. Since then, well, it's been reduced again. And I, unfortunately, had something to do with that in the late 80s. The artwork would come in, and if it was regular 10 by 15 letterpress book stuff, they had no trouble making a Xerox of it for the colorists. But if it was bleed page, it was bigger, and they had to do it in 2 pieces or do a stat and shrink it down and then Xerox it. So they decided to change the size, and the overall art size became something like 9 by 13, or I'm messing it up here, but it was, again, much smaller. Each time the letterers had to reduce their lettering from 1967, and then from the 1988 or whatever, they had to reduce the lettering size. Since then, of course, there have been a few people who've gone against it. John Byrne, for a while, he was doing the stuff, the old 12 by 18 art size. And Walt did part of one of the books he was doing with this writer. He did those large size. I loved it. I actually prefer lettering large. And
the Michael Moorcock
Moorcock
books,
the multiverse thing,
and like Elric, that 4-issue. Why is that not back in print? Oh God, it's so good.
It was wonderful. I really enjoyed that. Something happened toward the end. I don't know if Walt changed his mind on doing the bigger art because he could do the stuff faster if it was smaller, but he went down to the regular size. And why this happened, I don't know. My brain went flying off into the wilderness. I lettered it the same large size as I had in the other one. So if you look through the compilation book of it, you look through that, the lettering's whatever size it is, and then you get to the last episode, the lettering is huge compared to what it should have been. Why I did that, I should have known better. I can't tell you. I'd gotten so used to that. And there was another thing I mentioned earlier about learning to do everything. I'm probably going to get assassinated for this or something, but there was an issue of Fantastic Four when I was lettering it. And I think it was John Byrne's last issue. And there was something that happened back in the 60s that continued to bother me. There was an issue of Sergeant Fury where there was a close-up of Fury's face. And one eye was up here, the other eye was down there. The nose was right. And John Byrne had done the same thing. It was a close-up of Reed, or one of the Fantastic Four characters. And one eye was drooping. So I made a Xerox of that. And then I erased one of the eyes and put the Xerox underneath it and raised it up to the proper level and repenciled the eye. The inker didn't say boo about it. He didn't notice, and John Byrne never noticed, but something wouldn't allow me to let that stay as it was. So
yeah, I think that's a matter of practice, drawing from reference, right? Like a lot of comic book artists learn to draw from comics rather than from life. So they don't always know how to, like, the hood of the eyebrow is supposed to come over the eye, right? I'm not entirely sure what was the mistake you're talking about, but I've seen that mistake where, like, the eyebrow ridge is sort of not taken into account and somebody's eyes are visible like this. So, that's like, oh no, you just need to draw from life a little more to kind of understand that would not happen. I just have one completely irrelevant question for you, which is, I'm guessing you use technical pens for your hand lettering, right?
Yes, the Castels, which haven't been made in 20 years now or something. They're the metal tips, and I always really like them. The rapitographs, which I used before, I still use them at times, but the rapitographs, you had to hold them in a certain way.
Yeah, you have to hold them in a weird way. I don't like them.
And the Castels, you could move them around. You could even get something of a thin to thick line, not really overt, but something of it.
Yeah.
And I liked that, and they were just great. I remember the first time I picked one up, I was walking up Fifth Avenue from DC, near the Museum of Modern Art, there was an art store and it said Castell pens, new, $4 each. So I bought a couple of them and I went home. Now I was freelancing at night for DC, on staff by day, freelancing at night. And I had a story I was working on. I pulled out my rapidograph and started lettering, and I'm not kidding, it fell apart in my hand. And I thought, well, I'll try these Castells here. And they worked so beautifully. I stuck with them after that. Both Todd and I went around buying all that we could. And I thought I had a lifetime supply, but I was wrong.
No, you'll not eventually.
Yeah. But the latest Thor thing I did with markers, and that's the first thing that I did with markers where I thought that it worked.
We were talking about that a little bit before we started recording. John, do you want to reiterate about the marker thing? Because I don't know if they got recorded.
Well, the last thing I did for Walt, I did it with the Castells and everything went fine, but he changed paper on me on this one. And when I started inking it with India ink and all, it resisted the ink. It was like trying to ink on wax paper. I called Walt up about it, and we talked, and he'd almost decided to redo the layouts on all these pages on different paper and send them off to me. And I knew that would take him some time, and we're down to the wire as it is. But he did suggest that I try the markers or the technical pen markers. And I hadn't had any luck with them previously. I'd done a little bit of artwork with them and made an attempt at lettering, and I thought I was doing a lousy job. But I made a try on it, and it worked beautifully. The letter forms are fine. There's no falling apart. When I erased, this brings up another story, maybe for another time, but I don't usually erase my guidelines because I know they're going to be erased anyway. But I erased some of the guidelines here just to see how it worked out. There was no graying of it. It all worked out well.
Which markers were these?
One was a micron, and I think I used 2 or 3 different ones, depending on what
I do like the microns. They're quite good.
Well, there's an artist named Jay Disbrow from the 1950s, and I got to know him. We got along very well, although our political differences were but anyway, he did this thing very late in his life. It was sort of a Flash Gordon tribute. I think he did 200 pages, and he lettered it all with a couple of microns and did a great job. I don't think I could have equaled what he did.
Aditya, did you have any other even sort of random questions?
I mean, I could keep talking. This has been so much fun for me. You can see, like, I'm just grinning.
Yeah.
I've been grinning for the last hour and a half.
We've got to email back and forth and talk about things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
These are wonderful stories. I mean, I think letterers have the best stories because they don't necessarily have particular investment in anything. So they just get to see everything from the sidelines. So even right now, like most of the letterers I know, they have the best concept.
It is interesting how obviously the artist is able to work on the least amount of projects because it takes so long for them to do their work. An artist can work on 1 book, a writer can write 3 or 4 books. You get down to colorists, they can color however many sort of books with everything. And a letterer,
6 to 8 probably.
So a letterer's typical lineup comfortably is, what would you say?
10 to 15 books a month at least.
To 15 books a month. Really?
Yeah.
I
think so. Like most letterers I know work on that much.
Comfortably? Like, should they?
7 to 8 right now.
Okay.
But that's because I work like 4 hours a day. I don't really work full days anymore. Yeah, like my average used to be around 13 to 14 books a month.
That sounds
I used
crazy.
to do, at any given time, I had 200 pages sitting here. So I would do that in a month. So what is that? 10 books or something? And that's just the hand lettering.
Yeah. So I think the comfortable range right now is around 200 to 300 book pages. And anybody over that I would consider a very busy letterer. So I know, for example, Jim Campbell does around 400 to 450 every month. But then like he is a fast letterer. I'm one of the slowest ones in the digital gang. Like I do maybe 10 pages a day and that's kind of enough for me. But I'm very slow. Like I take a long time to letter every page.
Yeah.
I'm kind of happy with my output now. I can pick up another few books without any trouble, but I knew my eventual retirement will be when I keel over. I hope I can keep at it forever here, live forever or die in the attempt. But I am kind of enjoying lesser work because I'm reading constantly various things. And of course, comics, I'm like 27 volumes through the 30-volume Karl Barks library set. And he was a genius. And as I told you, I read The Fury and the Pirates, and I've read Dick Tracy and all these various things from 80 years ago or something. And I watch a lot of things on disc. I am going through something called The Survivors right now. It's a British series from 1975, 76.
Yeah.
It's kind of fallen down to the third season, but it's still, the characters are interesting, great fun. So I've been doing that sort of thing, a lot of entire series, and I enjoy that.
So how many books, like how many pages a month do you do these?
Oh, it's not a lot. I'm probably 60 or something like that these days.
Now, out of that, at least I think 20 to 25 are hand-lettered, right? Or are they all handed?
They're of different lengths and from different companies. I find that I enjoy them all. Throughout my career, there have been about 3 things that I walked away from in one way or another. I'm not going to bring up any names, but there was this one particular book where the writer was also a better than average artist. He had gone over into writing, but he really knew his artwork. And his descriptions of what went into each panel were just incredible. And the artist, who I admired the heck out of, it was like he had 2 17-year-olds tied up in his studio and that he made draw for him. And these beautifully composed descriptions panels were totally ignored. And he did the simplest thing he could do. And I did that for 6 or 7 issues, and I admired all these people so much, and I didn't know what was going on. And I finally told the editor, I'm going to have to move away from this, because like I said, I base everything on the artwork. The artwork tells me what to do. And this one, it was so mediocre, I couldn't do it. And then there was one thing that was weird from a political view. I was in total disagreement.
I've been offered a couple of those, and at some point I had to draw a line, like, what will I not letter? And I was like, anything that genuinely looks like hate speech, it's just, I can't do it. I'm a, dyed in the wool leftist, but I don't mind working for people who are conservative, but I can't do hate speech. Like, that's just way too much.
Well, I found, and this bothers me, but it doesn't bother me. It's a truth. There's no such thing as conservative and no such thing as a liberal. I'm conservative in some ways, more so than Trump ever was. And I'm more liberal than almost anyone you can name in other ways. I hate to see people lock themselves into one thing. Jay Disbrow, who I mentioned, he was very conservative. But we got along. Everything was fine because we both liked comics.
I mean, I live in India, so like almost everybody here is a conservative. So just have to get used to it.
But we contain multitudes. We have different parts of us.
I didn't ask you about Doom Patrol. Like, what was that like?
That is actually what I was. That's actually what I was going to ask. Yeah, the Grant Morrison.
I know. I'm a big fan of your work with Walt Simonson, but some of the stuff you've done on Doom Patrol is just like the Mr. Nobody balloons are beautiful. Like this, I love those. Yeah,
I loved working on that book. I will admit, right here and now, half the time I didn't know what the heck was going on. It wasn't until I watched the Doom Patrol series, the thing that DC produced, which I love, despite cussing in it.
It's really good.
But I really loved it. And for the first time, I understood what I had lettered 30 years ago. But the opportunities that were there to do different types of lettering, and now the artist would often rough out the title. And so I would go in. It was more than inking it because I would make some changes in it, but still.
Yeah, I think you designed a lot of those very well. I'm sure they gave you placements, but you did the design work, right?
Well, that was good too. After a while, they stopped with the placements. They just let me do what I wanted. And that was how it was when I was working on the Hulk. I enjoyed it. I did when I was doing Legion of Superheroes. I hadn't really read the book since the 1960s, when it was in the back of Feature Comics or whatever. So a lot of these characters were new to me, and I was so happy to have something with a tail pointing to the character, so I knew who was talking.
That's actually the only Legion I've read, and it is very confusing because I have no idea who these people are either. And you get used to it, but at the beginning, it's incredibly confusing because you have no idea who this is.
I just loved working on Doom Patrol. And there was another thing dealing with the artwork. There was this one particular panel of this little girl sitting at a desk, and it was beautifully penciled. And I thought, well, that's going to be inked. And I'm sure the inker will do a fine job, but it's going to change the character of the thing, So I went over to an ad agency that was nearby here, and I had them make a screened shot. This was before computers and all, or before what we can do with computers. I had them make a screenshot so that when it was reduced down, the dot pattern would work. And I gave them the choice of using that as a pencil drawing or going ahead and inking it. And they chose the pencil version that I'd given them. And the colorist made it look like a painting. It was gorgeous. But again, that's that Basil Wolverton coming back there. Learn to do, everything. Because you can help out other people who are involved in it.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. Like, that's one of my favorite. I think the energy of the lettering on that book is just beautiful, because Richard Case is also doing these very, I think Walt Simonson has like a loose style, but it's also like the compositions are very immaculate. Like they're very precise. But Richard Case, like the compositions are also very fluid. So I think your energy kind of goes really well with those. Yeah, it's a fun book to read because of your lettering.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, I loved working on it. And I think I did all the issues of it except one. I was on vacation. I believe Bob Pinahoff, I got him to fill in on that one.
I also think it's a huge pity for me that all of Sandman is lettered by Todd Klein except for one issue when he was on his honeymoon. And I'm like, okay, what? Like, you should get him to do that one again. Just have the whole thing. Like, I've actually killed myself to be like on like every issue of a book because I couldn't bear to have like one issue not have my work on it or my name on it. So I don't know like how Sandman has like one issue that's not by Todd Klein.
In the 1960s, this friend and I, he really got me into comics, but we discovered fanzines. And we would read these interviews with artists who were our heroes. And the interviewer would say, when you did this story, which is now a classic story that everyone knows about and it's been reprinted a million times. What were your thoughts on this? And the guy would say, I don't remember. And I thought, how could they not remember doing this? And now I know. Because so much of the stuff, like I said, I was up in the book room there going through these comics and finding stuff that I had done that I didn't remember having anything to do with.
Yeah.
Has that happened to you?
And I think as letterers, like the sheer number of pages we do end up forgetting at some point of time. Like there's just no way you can remember everything.
When you're speaking of fanzines and lettering, I have an interview with Bob Greenberger, your old Doom Patrol editor, and he had gotten his start at Starlog, which then begat Comic Scene, which he was like, hey, we need to do basically a Starlog for comics. And that magazine, which I guess isn't a fanzine, I guess it's a prozine, was really, really influential in terms of comics for me. Moving around as a kid, having this full color, glossy magazine about comics back in the late 80s. Like this thing was fantastic. What I had learned recently, thankfully, before I had a chance to talk to Bob, is that Stan Sakai, we're talking about, cartoonists and letterers of some renown.
One of the best cartoonists and letterers.
Oh, chef's kiss. I think this is pre-Usagi. He was talking with, Sergio, and Sergio wanted him to letter Gru. Stan was like, oh, okay, I don't know how to letter comics. Turns out that month or thereabouts, Comic Scene was a couple of issues into this is how a comic is made. It had a couple of issues where you'd have like the same pencil drawing, you'd have a couple of different inkers work on it. So you can see that inking isn't just tracing, like standard stuff now, but back in the day, like I'm sure that was mind-blowing. The issue that he saw, it had a lettering breakdown. Like this is, with use a names guide, you do this, blah, 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 stuff, written by Todd Klein. Todd Klein in some way taught Stan Sakai the bare bones of how to do comic lettering, and then Stan Sakai goes on to be, Stan Sakai, multi-Eisner winning letterist, in addition to being one of the best cartoonists working today.
Actually, most of the best hand letterers working right now are all artists. So like there's Dustin Harbin who lettered Casanova. There's Kurt Ankeny who lettered November. There's Galen Showman who letters all of P. Craig Russell's stuff. They're all like cartoonists and artists themselves. And I think that obviously gives you the skills to actually just draw. I've been reading like P. Craig Russell's The Ring of the Nibelung, and the lettering in that, I'm like, at some point of time, I need to get to that. Like I should be able to letter on the boards, and I should be able to letter that cleanly. Like that's just that immaculately. That's like, I should like maybe like when I'm 50, I guess. like another 10 to 14 years.
Bringing that back full circle, you're drawing letter forms as opposed to writing actual letters, and bringing it back to your mentioning of Tom Orzechowski. Orzechowski's lettering was what, being a huge X-Men fan back in the day, that was like the standard. And then when I got to see John's lettering, I was like, this is different. But then going back and looking and seeing what he was doing, yes, his actual letter forms were so, in some ways, almost like Terry Austin. Like they were super, super precise. And there was no, I mean, they were like laser sharp, which, considering how much text he had to deal with, probably one probably goes hand in hand.
Must be hell on the eyes.
Yeah. But the inverse of that is the sweep of his logos and sort of his sound effects and his other lettering. Really, really, like, that's artistry right there. There's one issue, I want to say 208. Rachel Summers has had her run in with Wolverine. She's wounded, holding herself together, using her telekinesis, running for her life through a crowd. And because she's focusing on this telekinesis to keep her heart pumping, because Wolverine has just stabbed her, long story, her telepathy is picking up stray thoughts of people as she's getting through this crowd. So you have a couple of pages of these panels of, like, starting almost with a blank panel, but then slowly kind of the cityscape is sort of drawn in, and you start to see like little bits of thought, not even like the balloons, but like the text. You have little snippets of Claremont dialogue, and the emotion of each one of these thoughts is rendered a little differently. And this one page, Orzechowski saying, hold my drink, let me just do something here, blah, 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 blah. Oh, it's fantastic. That, and then
what
going
issue is this? I would love to check this
It's either, I want to say 209, because 208, I think, is the one where she gets stabbed. So it's the one that's got, it should have Nimrod and Colossus on the cover. If it's either that, or it's the one that's got Wolverine with the claws and doing the dragged thing, which is like, absolutely, it's my it's my absolute golden age for that. And I could not make it through an interview without mentioning Claremont's X-Men or Tom Orzechowski. Thank you for that. Drinking game people at home.
See, that's the magic of hand lettering, I feel, because you can literally come up with a new lettering style just for one thing. In digital lettering, you would have to have a font for that, or just like once in a while I'll do that. I'll just draw that. Like Homesick Pilots, for example, has these very bloody, spattery balloons for like a particular character, and I just hand lettered those. I was like, there's no sense trying to find a font shift. Let's just do it all by hand.
You started without having any art training or whatever, but you're like, I'll just draw that by hand. When did you start thinking that was going to be a thing you felt comfortable doing professionally?
I pretty much started doing it professionally. For me, a lot of lettering has been learning on the page. So I think I have maybe 20 pages of lettering that nobody's ever seen. Everything else has been published. So like, while there have been certain things where I'll do a tryout and then I'll just throw that page away. But all of those are things that are going to go into professional books. Thankfully, like, my collaborators have been very happy to let me do that. I mean, if I am learning something and it turns out bad, like, they'll tell me, like, it's fine. We'll just throw it out. It's fine. So like, I will always go like, I mean, even in the lettering that I'm confident with, once in a while, I'll just go like 150 to 200%, knowing that they're going to pull me back, but I leave it up to them. Like, they'll let me know, because most of my collaborators, we kind of talk directly to each other, right? So once in a while, I'll just do something that is way too much and they'll pull me back. So even on these, like, I have had Ram tell me once in a while, like, you just need to redo that sound effect. That doesn't look good. And you got to be ready to do that.
Just because you had mentioned it earlier, I'm assuming you at least have read Monsters, the Barry Windsor-Smith.
I have not finished it. I've read the first 50 or 60 pages.
Okay. John, have you seen the recent Barry Windsor-Smith OGN 350-page monster of a book?
It's beautiful. It's a rejected Hulk story that he reworked into an entire original graphic novel. It's 350 pages. He worked on it for 35 years. It's gorgeous. Some of it is like, I just feel like real life should be drawn by Barry Windsor.
Yeah.
It's a very heavy book. It's a very intense book. So like, I can't read it in an afternoon,
Barry Windsor-Smith taking 35 years to do a book the way that he wants to do it. And he got to a publisher that was like, we'll let you do it the way that you want to do it. It is not hyperbole to call this a magnum opus. He's basically said, this is like the last thing I'm going to do of any real thing. So all the Barry Windsor-Smithness of Barry Windsor-Smith is in this thing. And it is fantastic in ways that will maybe not shock you, but you don't think of him as letterer. That's not the first thing that comes to mind when you think of Barry Windsor-Smith. And
but the lettering is excellent. Yeah.
And I'm just realizing there's a Strip Panel Naked episode on the lettering in here. So people should definitely go watch that. But some of the things that he does in terms of like, even I think some of it's maybe even early on in the books, you may have seen some of this, but he has a character speaking in German, but in sort of very frantic, arguing sort of thing.
Black letter, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So he'll have,
very
your balloon is like this, very Teutonic graphic font. So he's using font choice, lettering size, and the fact that it's like almost screaming behind the balloon, and the balloon is like a window into what this guy is saying.
Yeah. No, and he didn't hand letter at all. Like a lot of it is his typeface, but he was like, I'm working on paper. So he would basically letter it all on the computer, get somebody to go out and print it out, and then he would like paste it on. That's the main body copy is entirely pasted in. Everything else is hand drawn.
And then he'll do things where like people are talking and their word balloon is like a thing that you're sort of seeing, and you'll have people talking over each other in that sort of Robert Altman type of way. You can see just enough of the balloon behind the balloon in front to sort of know what's being said, but you also get the effect of having it covered up, so it's sort of obscured. I have like it's 350 pages of him doing absolute master level stuff. It's the book that everyone was like, oh, he'll go off and do his masterpiece that we'll never see because nobody ever like actually does this. He's like, no. Boom. Here it is.
It's beautiful. Like even the first 50, 60 pages are just like, you know what? This is worth the price of entry. Just beautiful stuff.
So,
and apparently gets way more intense and wonderful later.
It's like Stephen King meets Jack Kirby in an 80s Stephen King meets 60s Jack Kirby sort of way. It's fantastic. So yeah, you should pick it up if you get a chance.
Or was aware of this probably going back 20 years with Storyteller. Remember that one?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
They were wonderful, but I think it didn't last very long. And
there was no support for the format. Comic shops were like, these things are over magazine size. What are we supposed to do with these? And Dark Horse is like, and Barry's like, nope, I'm not dealing with this stuff anymore. I'm going to go work on my opus for 35 years. So, yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned it. I remember his growth for the 60s. He was trying to be Jack Kirby. And then he went off in a totally different direction by the time Conan came around. And as he got into Conan and the Red Nails story, that was fantastic.
So he'd done that and he kind of left comics for a while, did fine art. He was friends with a lady who I think was married to Herb Trimpe. So he and Herb Trimpe got to be really good friends. So when he came back and did the Machine Man miniseries for Marvel, which it was like,
I haven't read that.
It's mid 80s Marvel, but visually he came back and he said, I've been doing these portraits and all these things for so long. I just don't have the muscles anymore. So Herb was like, look, I'll do breakdowns for this thing. You finish it or whatever. It'll get you back up to speed. And he used this 4-issue mini as training wheels to get himself back up to being the Barry Windsor-Smith that we see in
so
like
this
Uncanny.
is before Weapon X.
Oh yeah. This is like 5 or 6 years before Weapon X. This is before Life, Death, I think, before around the time of that Thing Marvel Fanfare story, definitely before like Wounded Wolf and some of the other X-Men stuff. I think this was his first thing. If it wasn't his first thing back from hiatus, it was one of, because it was the I need to learn how to draw or relearn how to do this. So Herb Trimpe will help me. It was like the layouts in the first issue, breakdowns in the second and third, and then it's all Barry Windsor-Smith in the fourth issue. So again, the story, but it's...
I think that's the case for a lot of these virtuosic corporate books where the story just exists to like, I mean, I've never actually read Silver Surfer Parable. I've just looked at the artwork.
Oh, well, it's...
I mean, it's Stan Lee dialogue. I'm not somebody who grew up reading Stan Lee comics. I have no affection for those. So I just look at the Mobius artwork.
Yeah. And this is Machine Man, but it's like Iron Man of the future. So I really hope he designed that Iron Man costume, because it's the one that's got like the spokes and stuff on it and like the grill with the mouth thing. It's this really menacing Iron Man. It's actually, he's not I
remember that one.
So it looks great. And then I think he colors the whole, he either colors the whole mini or he at least colors that last issue. If you can, try and get it in the original issues, because of course, seeing everything on digital, it's great to have it digitally, but of course it's all like bright white sort of thing where he was
something
coloring
that
for
I genuinely feel sad about. All these recolors do not actually reflect the original coloring. They're just sort of really bright versions. I actually did a post about that. Jose Villarrubia has done a long series of articles about how old coloring should be reproduced and how they actually do it. And I just did a breakdown of what he's talking about and what the processes were and how those colors were chosen and stuff like that. It's a pity. I think more actual colors should be hired. People just don't want to put money into stuff.
Yeah.
I remember a few years ago, Marvel put out a Boys Ranch hardbound compilation of all the stuff that Harvey had done, Jack Kirby and Joe Simon back in the 50s. And I had several of those. And I compared the color. I thought it looked pretty good in the Marvel book, but I compared the coloring to the original, on lousy paper and all that, and it looked better than the new Marvel.
Yeah, because I think that they're taking the paper into account. There's the printing technique. Like we have much more sophisticated printing techniques now. A 40 yellow, and then you print it on ivory paper. It's going to look different than it's going to look on white paper. Mm-hmm. So you need to take that into account. There's a particular account on Twitter who actually tries to do restorations where he calls himself a remasterer. Mm-hmm. I don't remember his name, but he actually does it really well. Like it's all on white paper, but it looks right.
It's Alan Harvey, I think, if it's the same guy that we're,
It's Alan
Harvey. He worked with Colleen Durant for remastering A Distant Soil.
That's actually how I ended up following him, because Colleen was talking about it.
Because it's all, hey, here's my stuff from the 80s that has all this zipatone or duotone, duo-shade or, whatever. And it's like, we'll just remaster it. And you're like, you need somebody who really knows their stuff. And you see some of his and you're like, he can,
no, I mean, when you actually get the colors involved, like I have the absolute year one thing, and it shows the original printing plus the remastered printing. And the remaster is genuinely superior because this is Richmond Lewis and David Mazzucchelli have gone and actually restored the colors lovingly. Or violent cases where Dave McKean actually went in and just actually redid the color properly, based on his old paintings. You should do that. And if you value those books enough to reprint them, there is no reason not to go in and actually try and kind of replicate the original intentions.
Tying that thought into actually something John worked on with Thor for the omnibus, Steve Oliff came in and did recoloring for that. John, did you get a chance to see that work?
Walt sent me some sample things early on, and they were thinking at one time of doing what I did with Alex Nino's stuff on one of the things that he did for us at Heavy Metal, and that was put black behind everything. And I worried about that, but they went with the original non-black around it, and it did pop the colors out, but I thought it was better not to go in that direction.
I like it because Steve Oliff is freaking Steve Oliff. It is a more, let's say,
rendered.
That's it. Yeah. Approach. So it's nice to have as an alternative. But I do like going back to the original. Mostly, I think Christy Sheely did a bunch of those. The frustrating thing about is that when you go on Marvel Unlimited and you're looking for the issues, half of that run they pulled from the files for that book. The other half of that run they pulled from the originals. So
I know it's so weird to read. Yeah.
Like it doesn't bother me because I have both versions because I clearly love paper and I love, work stuff. It's like the worst of all worlds. You don't have all the remaster, which surprisingly enough, like I said, is enjoyable. It's great. You don't have all the originals, which of course were fantastic. You have a mismatch.
Right.
So
anywho. I do have a bone to pick with Marvel about lettering. I was down at Barnes & Noble a few months back, and they had a book that I hadn't been aware of. It was 100 events or whatever in the Marvel history. And I thought, well, gee, I wonder if they have, they'd certainly have Thor in there. So, and sure enough, they did. But my lettering wasn't in it. They had relettered everything that they put into that book. It could have been Fantastic Four #1 or, whatever. It was all relettered. So it had a standardized look about it. And it was computer lettering,
virtual calligraphy probably.
Now it bothered me, not so much because they think of my lettering, but all these other guys, that their lettering wasn't in there. It wasn't as the thing was originally seen.
Yeah, I mean, how do you have Fantastic Four #1 without Artie Simek?
That seems like more work than you would like. That's going out of your way.
I know.
I mean. Because that's not
I think some of these things are intended to not alienate newer readers who are not familiar with these things. But I don't know if that works because I don't think newer readers care about this stuff. Newer readers read hand-lettered books all the time. Like most young adult books and books for kids are all hand-lettered. So, I mean, they did it they homogenized it for a modern look. And I felt like the point of this book is that it's very 80s. So you should make it look like the 80s. The lettering does that. The lettering is actually Chris Eliopoulos himself. So he's kind of matched it to the 80s look more or less.
Mm-hmm.
But the coloring I feel is like a little too modern for my liking. Like it should look like the 80s. It should look a little flat and, bright. Yeah.
I discovered something when I was up at DC in the 70s. They were doing these larger than usual Justice League books, and they had some pages to fill in it. And Julie came up with the idea, or maybe it was Nelson, to kind of do a précis of some book 100 issues before, whatever number was being worked on then. And so they would give me entire panels with enough to kind of give you an idea of the story. But of course, some relettering had to be done. And I thought, I wonder if I could do these in a more contemporary way. And the artwork was done in the 60s, but make it look like it could have been done now, just from the design and the way the lettering fits into it. And I actually think I succeeded. If you go back and look at Justice League issues from 77 and maybe early 78. I worked on several of those doing those précis things. I was amazed by how you could make something so 60s, look like it was maybe 15 years later.
So this brings up a quick question I think I have for Aditya. Probably not for like the DC or the big two sort of stuff, but certainly when you're working on image books or image properties, not necessarily the lettering, but like the design. How much of that gets defaulted to you versus what the artist kind of wants in terms of a credits page or a logo or a design, like the design sort of the building of the design of
books, a book. Yeah, for creator-owned books, most of those books have a designer separately. For example, for the Department of Truth, Dylan Todd comes in and does it. I like to be aware of it because I feel like the lettering and design should also not reflect each other exactly, but sort of should have some relationship, because I don't like the idea that the cover and the credits page looks like one book and then the entire book looks like a different book. Like I wouldn't like that. So once in a while I'll give some input on the design as well, because I'm a very impertinent person and I don't stick to my lane. But I don't actually do that. Once in a while, it's interesting. Like sometimes they will want something that is really organic and probably somewhere in the middle of the book. So again, Department of Truth number 15 was entirely designed, but I did. Dylan still did the cover and the credits page. And the rest of it was, we actually had a conversation about whether I should do it or Dylan should do it. And then James was like, you have a go. And if you can't do it for some reason, we ask Dylan to come in. It's a whole other member of the team. And once in a while, like, it'll be a conversation. The thing is, I know a lot of letterers who do that, like Nate Picos, Jared Fletcher, even Clayton Colch. They are like designers themselves. I can do it. I'm just very slow at it. So my hourly rate doesn't work out for that. It's too expensive for me to do. So I prefer not to do it.
There are things that the letterer can do that get into the design aspect of the whole thing that are still very subtle. I've done this with Walt and Tommy and a lot of other people, where there's a panel. It's not a regular panel. It's got more oomph to it as far as what's happening in the panel and all. And sometimes to accentuate that, I'll thicken the border. It's a subtle thing, but it makes you pay a little more attention to that particular panel.
I do that stuff. Like, for example, I will do, explode, like, the entire balloon as a sound effect. I do those once in a while for a panel that's not really meant for that. And then I leave it to the team to decide whether they like it or not. Because again, it's digital, right? So I can just take it out if I need to. But I think Greg meant like design in the sense of production design. So like it's the cover lettering, cover logo and all of that. I would love to do cover lettering. I keep asking for it. Nobody wants me to do it, I guess. Like my Twitter actually says at this point, not available for comics color lettering work, but will consider cover lettering work. But I don't know. Nobody wants that these days. Nobody wants lettering on the cover. So.
That's a shame.
When I was looking through some stuff the other day, I noticed a few cover things that I'd forgotten about. I lettered several different versions and maybe different issues of Archie versus Predator, did the balloon lettering on the covers. And there was
did you? Nice.
Yeah, I liked that. That was great fun. And years ago, I did a Submariner. They wanted a balloon added at the last minute, and I did that one. And then there was a Thor free comic book day that I lettered a balloon for. And it took me back to the mid-70s there when I was doing the same sort of thing for DC. I did a logo that was fun. I'd forgotten about, not really a crossover, but it was a Archie Thor thing, and they got Walt to do an alternate cover for it, and they had me do the Archie logo as if it were the Thor logo, and that was fun.
Nice.
That sounds like fun, yeah.
I can't remember if I've asked you this or not. I know Alex J was involved with the Mighty Thor logo for your run.
The new
How
one.
did that come about?
I don't know. Walt wanted to know if I'd letter the book, and at that time they already had the cover done with him smashing, the old logo, and then the new logo came in, and Alex had done that, a beautiful job on it, but I don't really know the details behind it.
You might want to ask Todd Klein. He tends to kind of do this history of logos on his blog.
Oh yeah, that's right. Don't think I've got anything else. Aditya, do you have any?
No, I think I'm good for this one.
For this one. All right. Plus, it's probably like what 1:30 or something.
Yeah, it's
time?
1:30. Yeah.
So
that's okay. It's not nearly bedtime yet, but I'd love to continue this again, gather my thoughts, and kind of come up with more stuff. But I think for now, I've run through everything I had.
So, gentlemen, this has been an absolute pleasure as we are, sliding off here. John, is there anything coming out that we can look forward to? You mentioned a Thor, something. Anything else sort of in the works other than that?
I'm working on a lettering for a graphic novel for Abrams. It's a crime novel and really interesting. Sean Martinborough is doing, and it just storytelling and wonderful stuff. There's a Batman thing coming along. I've only worked on the first 17 pages of it, and it's supposed to be something very long, so we'll see how that goes. And we're talking about different types of balloons for the characters and all that sort of thing. So it's always great fun.
Yeah.
What else? Oh, of course, Jupiter. I'm still working on that, and I'm having such a great time with it. Where I've applied those Frank Ingley bolded words to what I've been doing, and that's almost a major step for me.
Nice.
Here I picked up something from the 40s that I could use. I love that kind of thing. I did an Archie thing a couple of years ago that was enjoyable, and I've been talking back and forth with the editors about upcoming things there too. So they're a great company.
I love the fact that Archie kept hand lettering going for so long before they switched to digital. You know, like it was wonderful to see Jack Morelli hand lettering till like 2010. And
I don't know how he does some of that stuff. The line quality on it is so neat, and it's solid, but it's got a bounce to it.
And he does those scalloped balloons with crow-quill nibs, and that's just like,
he's great. He's become the look of Archie Comics too, as far as the lettering.
Absolutely. Yeah, he still does those big designs and things, even in his digital work. I did an essay on him as well. Like I did an essay on you, Tom Orzechowski, Jack Morelli, and I think Costanza. I wanted to do Gaspar as well, except how do you cover Gaspar? Like there's too much. I couldn't finish the research. It was that much.
Well, I know also that both Ben Oda and John Costanza, of course, were darn good artists. I didn't know that about Ben until Joe told me. And John Costanza, I've got a beautiful, well, it was my daughter's really, a little golden book of Sesame Street that Costanza did the artwork on, and it's fantastic. But that goes with what we were both saying about the letterers, if they're artists too, they do everything else, that's a real plus.
Yeah. Dave Gibbons, obviously an artist who letters himself. And the thing I was thinking of earlier when you mentioned Marshall Rogers, Dave Gibbons also had a background as a surveyor. So before he got into comics, he was already primed into doing very detailed, meticulous sort of, world.
He actually built that street that he used in Watchmen, the street corner. He actually built that so he could kind of see it from all the angles.
Yeah. So you're like, the guy that apprenticed as a surveyor before becoming a comic artist turned out to be a guy who can draw like incredibly, not even necessarily detailed, because we're not talking like Jeff Darrow sort of thing, but just like rock solid backgrounds and settings and everything. Yeah. That's the same guy. I'm shocked, really. Yeah.
That's actually become a trend again, because Scotty Young's new book, The Me You Love in the Dark, he actually had a 3D model of the house commissioned for that, so that they could use it as reference. And I think for Nice House on the Lake, Alvaro Martinez Bueno, he actually built like floor plans for the entire book because they're included in the book. So Yeah,
Like,
like
show
I
your
think
work.
that trend's
Like,
coming
all right.
back. Yeah, show your
Sort of put that
Oh,
back.
do you
Yeah.
remember those things that the Fleischer brothers did back in the 30s where the
uh,
backgrounds were
Superman cartoons.
physical things in the animated cartoons? They did it a lot in Betty Boop and Popeye. They would actually build a set for these
Mm.
characters, and then the rest was done with cells and all that for the characters.
Right.
The backgrounds were real, and they could move the camera and get this three-dimensional effect. I think it would be pretty neat if that were applied to comics now. You could actually
Yeah.
build your backgrounds and then draw in the characters on an
That would be,
overlay.
I like a long time ago when I was a writer, I actually worked on a 3-page long strip where we actually went and photographed actual backgrounds and then the artist drew cartoons on top of that. I've always loved that. Like Scott McCloud talks about how you can kind of have very cartoonish characters against very rendered backgrounds. So I just wanted to apply that to actual real life backgrounds and then maybe have cartoon characters. Yeah. I think it's something that should come back. Build sets and then photograph those and then draw the characters.
Yeah.
It would be an interesting look to the book.
Yeah.
Making comics isn't enough work. Let's go ahead and just like, the whole thing about comics is like, they're like movies, but with an unlimited budget. You can do whatever you want. All right. So we'll do like half comics, but then we'll do like all the set building and all the expensive movies, but we'll just put it on paper. That's already like great. Fantastic.
Yeah. I once tried to get a costing on how to do a claymation comic, like build claymation models and stuff, and then we just photograph it and make a comic.
Mm-hmm.
And it'd be like, you realize you could just might as well then make a movie because that'll be really expensive. And then, okay, maybe I should do that at some point of time in my life.
Yeah. So, Aditya, what do you have coming out that we can follow you?
Pertinent to this discussion, Arkham City number 6 is coming out soon. That's sort of my tribute to Gaspar's lettering in Arkham Asylum, where like every resident of the asylum has a different lettering style. I think I pulled it off. Like, I'm not entirely sure. But then we have Batman Superman number 1 coming out soon. Swamp Thing is coming back. And I had a ball doing Batman and Superman because I got to kind of do like a very modern, sleek look, but integrate all this organic kind of learning that I've done. There's some hand lettering in there. There's some like weird sound effects in there. I think it's come out really well. Other than that, there's Department of Truth still going. I have been writing more. So I have a prose backup story coming up in the Silver Coin number 10. After like Michael Walsh's thing, for whom I also designed the font. So that's like a fun connection. I designed the font based on his hand lettering. I have something else, like a couple of comics things that I've written coming out in the next few months, but I'm not entirely sure when. So that's coming up.
Alrighty. Well, gentlemen, this has been
this was a privilege, by the way. This made me so happy. It was wonderful talking to you, Mr. Orko.
I've really enjoyed it too.
I hadn't talked to John in, like I said, far too long, and I'd wanted to talk to Aditya, and I was like, you know what? I should really get the two of them together. And I asked you, and you were like, absolutely. And John was like, yes, let's do that. I'm like, every once in a while, I have a pretty good idea.
And I got to make Haas very jealous yesterday when I.
Oh, really?
Guess who I'm on a podcast with.
It's just icing on the cake. So, alrighty.
Well, he gets to letter Alan Moore. I get to Dr. John Workman.
So there you have it, folks. Please do not forget to like, subscribe, rate, and review the show wherever you are given the opportunity to do so, because guess what? It really helps us out, and we would super appreciate it. Like I said, next week is the Aditya Bidikar episode on May 7th. So until we meet again, hopefully soon, my name is Greg. Stay safe, keep enjoying those funny books, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you for listening. Systems disengaged.